My name is Alyssa Peak, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Social Justice Committee at Temple Adass Israel here in Sag Harbor. I want to thank everyone on Zoom and in person who woke up on this beautiful Sunday morning to join us for a very important conversation on racism. I would also like to thank Rabbi Daniel Geffen for he and our cantor at the time after the shootings at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, that they decided we needed to create a committee to do outreach in our community and build bridges with others in our own backyard. It is very easy here on the east end of Long Island to look in our own backyard and only see the beautiful beaches and magnificent sunsets. But it is also very important to look at the other issues: homelessness, hunger, immigration, hate, children at risk, and racism. Our committee has been working on these issues since 2019. When the pandemic hit in 2020, our committee exploded with people who were out here and just wanted to do good. We have members and non-members and people of all faiths who have come together to feed families weekly for over a year. And I want to thank those committee members. With the murder of George Floyd, we started having webinars, monthly webinars to talk about racism, and we started reading books and watching movies and having really honest conversations, both with ourselves and with each other. And so when Don Lemon, our local resident here in Sag Harbor, wrote his book, This is the Fire, What I Say to My Friends About Racism, we thought, we'll read the book. We'll talk about the book. Maybe he'll show up on one of our Zooms. But here we are today in partnership with the oldest temple of Long Island and its rich history, with the newest church, this beautiful art center owned by Eric Fischel and April Gornick, which I know is going to create its own history. So thank you all for attending, and I am now going to introduce my co-chair, Andrea Klausner, but I have to do a special thank you to Heidi Rieger. Heidi, without you, none of this would have happened. So thank you.
Good job. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Andy Klausner, Alyssa's co-chair. I'm Alyssa's co-chair of the Temple Adass Israel Social Justice Committee. I have the privilege of introducing our two speakers today. Both of our guest speakers have such impressive lists of accomplishments that we could easily spend the whole morning just discussing them. But I hope our speakers will forgive us for condensing their bios so we can get right into this important community conversation. Dr. Georgette Grier-Key, our moderator, is the inaugural Executive Director and Chief Curator of Eastville Community Historical Society of Sag Harbor, the President of the Association of Suffolk County Historical Societies, the Cultural Partner for Sylvester Manor of Shelter Island, and a full-time history and political science professor at SUNY Nassau Community College. She is one of the most outspoken advocates for the preservation and celebration of Long Island history, with an emphasis on African American, Native American, and mixed heritage historical reconstruction. Don Lemon, our guest of honor, who needs no introduction, currently anchors Don Lemon Tonight, airing weeknights on CNN at 10 p.m. He also serves as a correspondent across CNN US programming. Don joined CNN in September 2006 after working as a correspondent for NBC News, The Today Show, and NBC Nightly News, as well as an anchor on Weekend Today and on MSNBC. Don has been CNN's leading voice, guiding viewers through the death of George Floyd and summer of nationwide protests and riots. He also co-hosted the Color of COVID special that addressed the pandemic's impact on communities of color. He now adds to his impressive list of accomplishments a #1 best-selling New York Times author for his book, This is the Fire: What I Say to My Friends About Racism. For those of you watching us on Zoom, if you haven't already purchased a copy of this very personal and moving account, please contact Catherine or Marianne at Canios Bookstore here in Sag Harbor. If you are joining us live, you may purchase a book pre-signed by Don at the book table following our program. We are so grateful to our speakers for giving up their Sunday morning to be here with us today so that we may learn from them and be inspired to continue the hard but critical work of eradicating racism and bigotry from our communities. If we travel this path together with one strong voice, we can make a difference. Please join us in giving Georgette and Don a warm welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm not usually up this early on a Sunday, or a Monday, or Tuesday, or Wednesday. Hi, there's my family over there. Say hi. Hey, Donna. Oh my gosh. Donna Karen's here, everybody.
This is exciting.
Recognize some faces. Hi.
Wow, this is really exciting. So happy to be here.
My old boss is right there. Phil, say hi. Phil hired me at CNN in 2006, and he's regretted it ever since.
So this is an exciting, but this is a little bit nerve-wracking for me. As you can see, he's a host, so he knows he can run this thing himself. He can, I mean, this is really, I'm telling you, but thank you so much for being here.
I'm cool. I live here. This is my community, so I feel right at home.
Yeah. I mean, and you're at home on the microphone too, and being, in front of a camera. So I can tell you, I'm a little shaken. But thank you so much. I'd like to thank, the Social Justice Committee, our co-host, the church, and all of you for being here. We have a beautiful audience and just beautiful people. So we're here today to talk about eradicating the isms, as I like to call them. And thank you so much for this wonderful book, Don, if I can call you Don. I'm on a first name basis now. I'm so cool, I'm so hip, but thank you. I have so many questions. I mean, you've managed to masterfully pack this book with historical context, and not just historical context, real life issues. And I think the biggest thing for me is that you've brought it to a place where we have seriously think about current day issues that are happening right now, where people think about history being so far away from us, and because it's so far away from us, it's not real. Right. And we think about these things happening so long ago, but they matter to us now, and they impact our lives now. Yeah. So before I open up, is there anything in particular that you want to actually really go over?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I was sitting back there reading the book. I haven't read the book since I read it when I got it in the mail, and the day after it came out. I just kept reading it, the material, because I wanted to be familiar with the material, because there's a lot packed into a few pages. But what's important to me is one of the main reasons I moved to Sag Harbor was because of the diversity in Sag Harbor, because of the history of African Americans. History's not that far away when you think about 1947. with Maud Terry and Amaza Lee Meredith, what they did was extraordinary. And 1947 was not that long ago. My mother was alive. My in-laws were alive in 1947. And so, you know, the journey is not that far, and I think the journey is still with us. So it was important for me to be in a community out here on the water that had diversity, and that a community that was committed to diversity and having all people live together. And that look around the room, that's what you see here. I don't often see that in other places, in other Hamptons, but it's here. And so that's why I wrote about Sag Harbor. I actually start with Sag Harbor after I get past my great nephew. Sag Harbor is the first thing that I talk about because it's my happy place, and I want it to continue to be a happy place, not just for me, but for everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I know that we have plenty of the members, we have members in the audience that have been a part of the historic fabric of the diversity within Sands community, which is the Sag Harbor, Azarest, and Nineveh communities. In particular, I'm looking at Donna Marie Bonds, who always tells people that she's been summering here for more than 60 years. And we have Renee Simons also here, who came up with the acronym SANS. And we've been fighting for the preservation for a long time, and we have achieved state and national significance, which is the highest level. So thank you for put that plug, because it's really important, you know, that we have been recognized as one of the only places left in the nation to have that designation.
It's historic.
It's historic.
It is historic.
It's historic.
And something that people should be proud of here.
Yeah,
The entire community should be proud
Definitely.
of it. Yeah.
And since we're going there,
Yeah, go for it.
even before Sands, you know, the Eastville community, this is going back, that's why Sands was even possible, because Eastville was a place that they stayed in when they were building those developments, which our tagline is linking three cultures. So I think that's important that you said that, and so thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's a plug for us.
All right,
Thank you.
good.
But it's really important, and I see the rabbi here. He actually lived in Eastville. So that's really important that we've been a place of diversity, and it's existed well before any of the laws made it so for integration. So yeah, thank you for, and being known for our artist community. And just a place for the arts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this. This facility is beautiful.
It is. It is.
So what do you want to know?
Well, we don't have a lot of time, but you know, one of the things when we think about how we eradicate some of the isms that are not so much embedded in our everyday lives, and for us here locally, how do we, you know, think about being better to one another, being better neighbors, being better brothers and sisters to one another, being better keepers of each other. And in the book, there is a particular page, 2 pages that we focused on as the Social Justice Committee, 126 and 150. So if you have your books, we're gonna go to school now.
This is like to go. Let's see. So what you? What do 126?
Yes.
Oh yeah. I figured you'd talk about that. Interesting. So that's going to lead me down a whole thing.
Yeah,
Let's
and
see what's
I just have
150.
some words for you: privilege, motives, optics, gaslighting, and sensitivity. And those words come up because I think it's important for us to have those words right in the forefront of our brains. You know.
Well, here's the thing. I think the second part of what you said is how we can become better. Because I don't think you're going to eradicate anything. I don't think you're going to eradicate sexism, racism, any of it. But we can certainly be better.
Ageism and
that's
ableism.
Yeah. I mean, listen, that would be fantastic if we could.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't think so. Maybe there are people who do, and I respect you if you think that we can eradicate that. But I don't think that way. I think humans are fallible, and humans are human, and I think that you have to allow people to be human beings. But having said that, I think that we can educate each other. I think we can see each other's humanity, and which is what we really need to do, and that's through relationships, getting to know people. The main thing I think that, well, let me start. I'll do that later. I think that we have to start by educating and teaching children the history of the country. You know, there's this whole thing going on about, you know, critical race theory and what do you teach or whatever. Listen, I'll let the schools decide that and parents. But what I do know as a person of color who has lived in this body and in this world for so many years, is that we were having a conversation last night at dinner. There's so much about the history of people of color, especially black people, enslaved people in this country that we don't learn. We don't learn about Tulsa. We don't learn about what I write about in the book about the German Coast Uprising in 1811. When, you know, there were nearly 100 people killed because do I have to? You guys
Yes,
can hear me?
we can hear you.
Because they didn't want to be enslaved anymore. And there are so many incidents in history like that that we just don't know about because they aren't discussed. They're not in a history book. We learned, you know, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And okay, fine, that's fine. But that can coexist with other histories in the country.
Or the truth about that.
Or the truth about the truth about our forefathers, which is okay. That's okay. Nobody's perfect, right? Because I certainly am not perfect, and so I think that the history needs to reflect the truth of this country about who founded the country, who built the country, why our history books have been written to elevate certain people and denigrate other people, and it's all about who is telling the story, right? It's about what perspective, and we talked about this at dinner last night. What is the perspective of the person who's telling the history? What is the background of the person who's telling the history? And so I think that we start from there, all right? So I won't go too deep into that, but I think you all get it. There are lots of educators and very bright people in this room. The other thing is, I think, is through relationships. I think that many times, I talk about the diversity of Sag Harbor, and I mean Sag Harbor area in general, meaning Nineveh, Sag Harbor Hills, Azurest, and so on. Many times I see people, although it's a diverse community, we're still polarized in our own communities.
That's right.
So what I tell people all the time, and I think it's simplistic and a lot of people fight against this, but I really think it is the thing that's gonna help all of us, is that you need to get a friend or a lover or whomever who doesn't look like you, who doesn't have your same interests, who doesn't agree with everything that you say.
Especially when you're choosing movies, movie night.
So that you can actually, because otherwise you limit yourself,
Yeah.
right? And you sort of stew in your own ignorance and in your own whatever it is that everything is like, oh, this is great, yeah, everybody thinks the same. Not everybody thinks the same thing.
No.
So I think that we're going to solve this through relationships, because through relationships, what do? You learn to trust people, you love people, you have a relationship with them, and what?
Change.
You change. You grow. You learn things about people. And I think that's the only way that we're going to do it. So I always say, and I hear people say it's not that easy. It is that easy.
It
You
is.
know it's hard. Digging a ditch is hard, right? For a living. Climbing up a telephone pole and doing electricity when there's a power outage, that's hard.
Trying to make $1 at 50 cents.
Right. Meeting someone in the carpool line or someone in a grocery store and saying, hey, I see you at Bobby's baseball game all the time, and I know that they play ball together. We're having a cookout at our house on Sunday. Why don't you guys come by? And say, that's not hard.
No, that's not.
I do it all the time. And Tim says, you will talk to anybody. Because I do. I grew up to talk to anybody.
Saying hello to your neighbor.
Yeah. And guess what? If you don't like them, you don't have to invite them back.
Yeah.
And they don't have to come back. But you made an effort. So that's how I think we're going to solve this. And I think that we should become more curious and less judgmental.
You're talking about a community.
Yeah.
That's what a community does, Tom.
Yeah.
When we grew up, we knew who was making the potato salad, and that
Yeah.
probably put raisins in it.
Yeah.
You just moved everything around, and you never ate it.
But I also write about in a very loving way of my little nephew-in-law, Henry. He has so many questions, and he's curious as a child, not judgmental. He wants to know. So we need to bring that sort of childlike quality back and be curious and ask questions And then for those who are answering the questions, they should be more curious and less judgmental as well. Because there are times I do feel like I'm the African American authority, because that's why I wrote the book. Hey, Don, can you help me with this? I'm like, am I your only black friend? I think I am. But anyways, but it's a joke, but it's kind of true.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised if you now are around him and he's around other people, he's now going to be the African American authority to his friends.
gonna know.
Because he's going to know.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen with my nephew.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised because he has these conversations. We went out to a restaurant and I'm just looking like, this kid is like 50. Like, it's really amazing
Yeah.
because kids do what they have seen you do and not what they are being told.
And they really haven't learned or been taught to be self-conscious. I think they learned that from either their parents or guardians or from peers to be self-conscious.
Yeah.
Kids haven't really learned that.
No.
So you wanted to know about
Yes.
page whatever. Okay.
126.
126. So the interesting thing about that, which I said I was going to get to, is that I was not going to put that in the book. Because I thought I was like, this is too bougie and privileged. And I'm not going to write about that. But I do remember at the time it was a very emotional experience for me that I had to share with him and that he helped me process. And that's probably something, if he was not in a relationship with me, that he would never have experienced. And so I was writing it down and talking to the publishers and the collaborators, and I was like, I don't know if I want to put that in there. And they were like, no, you've got to put it in there. And I said, well, I'm talking about these expensive cutting boards and whatever, and it's like, it's no secret. I work very hard, and I do okay, where I can afford an expensive cutting board time or two if I want to. So I put it in the book, and it has been the one thing I think that has resonated with every single person of every different ethnicity and background, because I realized in putting it in there is that racism and discrimination is not just, it doesn't just take place in a certain social economic place, right? It's all over. And as I've been talking about with, what's happening in the Royals, you can experience racism whether you live in a castle or you live in a one-bedroom apartment in a depressed area. And so I put it in there and it resonated. So you want to know what happened? I kind of wrote.
Well, we know what happened.
We know what happened.
But
So
to
what do you want to
me,
know?
I think in particular, it was your response. First of all, it wasn't even your response. It was your processing of it that really resonated with, many of the people that I talked to.
Yeah.
And when I talk to many of the folks, they say, this happens so much, but most of the people never do anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Not only do, the victims, I don't want to call you a victim, but who it happens to, they do nothing about it. And the other part of it, you had processed it with him.
Yeah.
People don't go through that process. So when you list all of the things out, it's like the grieving process. When
Yeah.
you go through all of those grieving stages,
Yeah.
that was really significant. And then how
it
you
wa- it
went
wasn't-
back gracefully.
But it wasn't just Tim. I mean, I had this sort of support group of African American television anchors like Tamron Hall and Joy Reid and whatever. And so it was okay, am I making this up and whatever? And I went through and with my mom and with Tim, and everyone came to the same conclusion. Is that it makes you feel uncomfortable. This is a place that you have to live, and it's a place that, especially people of color, live in that space. And if it makes you uncomfortable, then you need to do what you have to do. And the only thing that I'm not a person that wants to cause a stir, ever. And I have to be very careful about that, right? Because people take things the wrong way, and then it ends up in page 6, and you're trying to explain things, and people make up things and whatever. So I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to do it in sort of the most profound and classy, if that makes sense, way that could be handled. Because many times people don't expect that, especially from someone who looks like me. They expect me to go to 0 to 100, and like, how dare someone? That's not who I am. So. I went back and forth, and I said, I'm going to return it. And so I went and I returned it, and the person at the store got the message. whether or not, and I wasn't accusing them. And quite frankly, here's the point of it. The point was not to accuse someone or to make someone feel bad. It was also, in writing about it in the book and the experience, it was to inform them of how I live as a person of color. I write in the book that black people live in, it's like getting ready for a race. When it's a ready, set, go. We live in a set all the time where we're thinking something's gonna pop off, someone's gonna mistreat us. It's, is an experience we're having, is it racism, is it discrimination, is it, whether that's fair or not, that's where we live, in that space. And so to other people, especially to white people, if we can be honest here, they don't understand it because they don't live in that space. You guys don't often live in that space. And so are there times when it is not based on race? I'm sure it is. But we don't know that because we have been programmed for that to happen. It's not necessarily been programmed. We have been socialized. That's the history of America. And so I wanted to inform the store owner of how I felt. I wanted to make sure that I corrected the way that I felt inside. I had to do something about that because I could never look at those cutting boards on my counter. I couldn't give them to someone as a gift and feel good about it.
So you said you didn't want to talk about this, and now you're talking about it.
Well, you asked me to, so I'm going to do it.
But I'm glad you are, because now I'm almost getting emotional about it, because we're doing this, and we have cameos here, and we're doing, because I never heard you say how you felt about it.
That's how I felt. It made me feel horrible.
Yeah, and see, now you're making me get emotional.
But I felt horrible. But here I am. I live here, and I was like, wait a minute. I live here. I pay taxes. This is, a few steps from where I live. It doesn't feel good. It did not feel good.
And
You can feel it. You feel it when it's happening and when something's right. You can feel it in your bones. But
can I ask you something now? Because we're doing this trauma work. We have a circle, and we're doing trauma work. So this is like trauma. Imagine that this is happening over and over again.
Right.
And if you didn't do anything about it, this is that trauma that gets pushed down.
Right.
This trauma work, with Caneos, we have a trauma work that we're doing. This is that trauma.
If you read Eckhart Tolle, which he writes about, do you guys know Eckhart Tolle?
I think that I didn't want to say the book. We're doing your book now. I didn't want to say the name of it.
Well,
but
he writes about what's called a pain body, and women have a certain pain body that they carry around because of how women are treated in society. Jewish people have a pain body that they carry around. African Americans have a pain body that they carry around. And anyone who has faced any sort of trauma or discrimination, they have a pain body that they carry around. And so, yes, that was part of it. It made me feel bad. But the bigger part of it was the reason I had this support group, and the reason it was important to talk to Tim about it and to my family and to my support group, was because it wasn't just about me. Like, often I think that we get involved in this selfishness about, this is about me. I tried to figure out what the greater good was. Mm-hmm. And the greater good was for the shopkeeper to be able to get the message because they can learn a lesson. I did not want to affect his or her business because it's something that I wasn't 100% sure about, or just because that's just not who I am. I think people should be able to eat. Even if they're a racist, you should be able to eat.
Just not with your money.
But just not, exactly. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. So I did not want to take, if there are other people who want to shop there, that's their business. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to get my money, and you're going to learn a lesson. And at the end of the day, this is what happened.
Yeah. Well, let's give him a hand for that.
And that was it. Afterwards, when he gave me the receipt, I said, to return my money, I said, thank you very much. And I walked away.
Well, good for
you.
And
it was all good after that. And Tim and I went to the beach.
Good for you. I would have had a donut, though, after that. Because that was just too much for me, just even sitting here, and I wasn't even there. I mean, really. Oh, my goodness. But I think that resonated with a lot of people. And that is, that's our guilty pleasure.
Yeah. But I do think that we should think about, I always say grace. And I don't think that, you should let people walk all over you. But I think that there is, I'm a big enough person, and I think enough about myself. I have enough self-determination and autonomy that I can carry things with grace. Just because you act like an ass doesn't mean that I have to act like an ass. My mom raised me to be a classy person, and so I'm not going to let you bring me down to that level.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. I tell you, it took a lot of practice to go back there and say, you have a nice day now.
Yes. And thank you for my $400 back.
Yeah. Whew. So, I mean, and then when I that really resonated with me because I was saying a lot, that happens a lot. And the fact that, you really took the time to think it out and process it was one of the things that I don't think a lot of people do.
Well, but also because I think that, even just moving beyond that, I just think that look, how can you grow up in America, in American soil, and not be a product of the soil that you came out of? And unfortunately, in our history, that is what we've been taught, and that's how we've been socialized. So people are victims of circumstances, are a product of their experience and a product of their upbringing. So if you don't learn about the history of this country, if you're not taught that in school, how can you act otherwise?
Yeah.
So there has to be a certain understanding about that, but also a certain commitment to teaching people, again, I go back to the true history of the country, and also seeing other people's humanity.
Yeah.
So if I want you to see my humanity, I'm going to see your humanity, and if there's a lesson in it for both of us, then we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only way forward. I think that's the only way forward is first to see each other as human beings, and to be treated as you want to be treated. Yeah. And if people get that message, and that understanding, first, we are the same. This whole racialized thing is a human construct. We are one race, and that's the human race. Yeah. And unfortunately, we do not get to see that very often. And when we think about our way forward, it's a mano to a mano, what we are doing here in this room, having that conversation. And as you said, befriending someone else that may not look like you, that may not have the same beliefs as you, but what do we have in common? And is that we want the same things out of life. We want that happiness. We want to enjoy one another's company at least. Can we have a conversation like we're having here today? Break bread together.
Well, this is a start.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could, this would be great if everybody's church was like this on Sunday morning, but it's not. If everybody's church was like this, but it's not. Listen, I just did a 2 days ago. Was Thursday? What's today? Sunday. Thursday. I did a panel with Bernice King, Ambassador Andrew Young, C.T. Vivian's son. And the gentleman who wrote his book. And, we talked about how Dr. King and Reverend Vivian said that the most segregated place
is Sunday
morning in the church. And so we go to church and we want to, atone for our sins and be better people. But then often we're around, again, like-minded people who think like we do and look like we do. We're separated by pews. There are no pews here. But I think churches would be better if it was open concept and if it was come one, come all. And listen, people want to practice the religion they want to practice, and as they should, right? That's kind of why the English came over to this country based on supposedly religious freedom and blah, 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 blah. So people should be able to practice the religion that they want to practice. But I think that we should also be conscious of how church separates us, and can divide us when the whole idea of church is supposedly to bring us together, to help us to understand our fellow man. It often, in my opinion, doesn't do that.
Okay, well, I know we have some religious leaders here, so I don't want to pretend that I'm one, but I will say that often I think that's a human error within the church.
Well, it is. Let me also say, but it is, and listen, this is not a judgment, this is just me, this is an observation. But then, 2 hours later, everybody's at the ball game, yelling and screaming together for the same team.
Yeah.
Of all different ethnicities.
Yeah.
and backgrounds.
Yeah.
So it would be great if we could all get together at church on a Sunday morning and all yell for the same team
Yeah.
while we're, you know,
Yeah.
we're rooting for the same team while we're getting to learn about each other.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, because really that's what it's about.
Yeah.
We're all on the same team.
Yeah.
We're all on the same team. I think in reality, a lot of these principles carry over to just about every religion.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same principles about love, respect for one another, honor, and so the thing about it is we don't do it.
Yeah.
We don't do it, and that's the problem. We're sometimes self-motivated and me, and that's what we have to get rid of, the separation that comes within those things about me. So how are we on time, Andy? Someone give me the time. Okay, so we have a lot of time. We have time scheduled up. So now thinking about that, one of the things that comes up is, you know, everybody's talking about, because we get into religion, and people are always about changing hearts. And you talk about, I'm really not into changing hearts, right? You said you're into changing behaviors, and that's where we're getting when we're talking about the human error that comes into things, because all of these interpretations and alternative facts that we're now starting to see is a part of that, you know, what people think and their banter that we start to see and all these different things that are going on. Even in regards to what students are being taught in textbooks, you know, we have the power to change that. How do we as a society and a community begin to change what is being taught, what is being said, how we respond as a community?
Well, it would be, listen, I think it would be great if you can change hearts. I think sometimes you can do that, but that is a very difficult task. That's a monumental task to change hearts. And hearts can be changed, I believe, through relationships. But changing behavior is the most important thing. Because you know, even if you change someone's heart, you may not change their behavior, right? Because people act out of emotion, and people act out of habit, right? Because they've always done it. And people are, you know, don't even understand sometimes their own anger, their own fear, their own privilege, their own busybodiness, their own nosy, until you snap them out of it. I always say, seriously, I think people don't really get it and don't really, people should learn to mind their own business. Seriously, people should learn to mind their own business. I mean, we were just an experience. We were walking over here, and I was walking with them. We were walking next to Matt. You know, my brother-in-law is the principal at the elementary school, and I live not far from the annex of the new elementary school. And so I was just kind of admiring. I was talking to his dad, and I was about to say, "Look, this is Matt's territory, right?" And I said, and someone like yelled out of the window, like, "There's a crosswalk 20 feet away," and it was like, what is that? That's not your business. Unless you're going to stop for us or we're inconveniencing you, keep moving. And so what is that? What was that? Either that was he was acting out of, that's because that person has been allowed to do that forever, to be a busybody and mind and yell at people out of a window. My mom, if I yelled at someone out of the window, she'd say, "Mind your business." Leave those people, she wouldn't say leave those, leave them people alone. That's not your business. Unless they run out in front of your car or about to, that's not your business. Keep moving. And so that person is either acting on fear, maybe he thought that we were city folk and we weren't obeying the rules and whatever. And these folks have lived here for decades, and I have a house around the corner. So I'm not a city folk. I don't know if it was that or if it was just like someone who's just used to having their way and saying, "These are my rules, you need to go to that crosswalk." Well, we see the crosswalk is there, and maybe we would have noticed it if you gave us 2 seconds. Or maybe nobody gives a damn but you. Okay? So mind your business. So changing people's behavior is the most important thing. And how do you do that? You do that through laws. When you look at what's happening around the country with voter suppression and all kinds of things, a litany of things that I don't have to go over. So you're never going to change those people's hearts who want to restrict voting from people who may leave Sunday church like this, who usually go to the polls and vote after church because they're motivated to do the right thing, whatever it is, to vote for their candidate of choice. And now you want to restrict that. Why? Because it doesn't work out in your advantage. So how do you change that behavior? With laws. So those people are using laws to try to correct what they think is wrong. You're never going to change their behavior. I mean, you're never going to change their hearts, excuse me, but you may be able to change their behavior through laws. So that's the only way that that's going to happen. You're not going to get people to stop discriminating against people. When you're the preeminent voice, when you're used to having things a certain way, it's hard for you to change. When you're used to having power, it's hard to someone to take that power away from you. When you're used to having wealth and privilege, it's hard to have that taken away from you. When you're used to a country or your world being the same way, and you see these other folks coming in and they start getting rights and they start accruing wealth, and your neighborhood starts to change it, that's frightening for a lot of people. And whether that fear is rational or not, who am I to say? Usually it's not. That you're not going to change any of that.
Yeah.
Until you change behaviors, and you do that through laws. And what else? Guess what? The biggest way you do that?
Yeah.
Economic power, money.
But you know, what happens when we start to use both our power and our voice through voting for these people and strengthening their campaigns through donating, and the powers that be rise up? I want to know if I'm going to be a busybody. If I was going to ask you, were you ever consider being a preacher or a politician?
I'm not political. Listen, I'm not taking a stance on any certain thing.
No.
But let me tell you this: I'm always for. If this is as political as I'll get. I'm always for people having. I think the right to vote is a fundamental right in this country, and I think that as many people as possible should be able to vote. There should be as many hours as possible for people to be able to vote and take part in the process that affects their life and how they are going to move through society. And so I think that voting should be a national holiday.
Oh, yes.
I think we should let people off of work and let them go. Maybe they should move the I'm just saying maybe, so don't if you give this to the newspaper. Maybe it should be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And that should be the day that we all go vote. And that's the national holiday. What a way to honor Dr. King is to change election day to his birthday, and then we all get the day off and we can all go to the polls and celebrate.
Yes.
And we can bring as much food and water for anybody in line. and that's our picnic. And that's our barbecue. We could bring the grill to the place and everybody's in line celebrating and having a good time instead of standing there going, oh, I got to get back to work. My boss, I can't stay here. Okay, can you hold my place? Yeah.
Good idea.
So there you go. Anyway, I know that's never going to happen, but a boy can dream.
That's a good dream. Yes. So if you have questions, we are going to have Andy here, she'll walk around and she'll gather the questions for you. But yeah, I mean, that's, fair game, I think that holiday will be great, other than, just using it for a day of shopping. Yeah. Like most of the holidays, they get, use it for shopping.
We can find some civil rights leader whose birthday is in November and make November whatever and make it a national holiday.
Yeah, I think that
or
that
a
would be
president
great. Yeah.
or someone.
Yeah, yeah. It's better than using it for shopping. That's really commercialized. But I really do think that there's so much that you have in this book with making an effective change. Yeah. We talk about a lot of allies and what they can do. So I have a lot of stuff on 150. I had that little section that I have outlined. I didn't know if you care to read about that, like where we say on 195 that we are capable of releasing the burden of racism, because there is so much that goes into it that really affects our lives.
I just put my glasses down.
Oh, Lordy.
Yeah.
I think it's really important that we make that transition. And what I wanted to say too is, Don really talks about all of us individually, black and white, that we have to do a self-examination on ourselves. within our structures and constructs, and that's really important, that everyone have to do a self-examination. So if you haven't really fully read the book, because I know people that are in book clubs and they come and they haven't read the book, please read it.
Well, let me read this. In the final pages, I write, the book is called This is a Fire because it was based on James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, which was a book that had the most profound influence and impact on me as it relates to racism and sexuality. And I read it, I think, my freshman year in college. And then after I read that, well, the first book I read by James Baldwin was Giovanni's Room. And then after Giovanni's Room, I read The Fire Next Time. And then I read the entire Baldwin canon. But in it, I said, in the final pages of The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin holds out hope for the relatively conscious whites and relatively conscious blacks who must, like lovers, insist on or create the consciousness of the others. But in that hope, there's a guarded undercurrent of skepticism, the ever-present set, as I write about. I think he knew there would be a next time, and a next time, and a next time after that, because the next times will never end until black people reject their numb complacency and white people reject their entitled privilege. For a long time now, we have been in need of this sort of intervention that places an addict on the road to recovery. I think of racism as an addiction. I also think of it as a spell that you have to be snapped out of. Like you gotta snap out of it. Mm-hmm. There's a potential for the rock bottom moment in the pandemic of 2020, and it might be a long time before such a moment comes around again. Will we take the first step, admit we have a problem, and begin the hard work of our national salvation, or will we return to the comfort of the status quo like a junkie to the needle? We are capable of releasing the burden of racism. We are capable of dialogue that fosters intersectional alliances. We're capable of educating future generations with self-honesty and shared humanity. We are capable of intelligent, organized activism that pushes towards a common goal. We can be simultaneously fearless about our future and truthful about our past. Can I say that again?
Yes.
Okay. We can be, we are capable of educating future generations of self-honesty and shared humanity. We are capable of intelligent, organized activism that pushes towards a common goal. We can be simultaneously fearless about our future and truthful about our past. We can be equally conscious of our country's failings and proud of our country's progress. The very essence of progress is to build a bridge that takes us from here to there. But what good is progress without healing?
That's right. Wonderful.
I'll keep this in case someone asks a question about that.
Okay.
All right, I thought they would just yell out, like people just yell at me on the street, like, there's a crosswalk just 20 feet away.
Lord, I know some of these handwriting, may have to change it up.
Do you want me to read it? You got it?
Yes.
This book slowly released a valve of relief of an inner scream of injustice that has been pinned up deep within longer than I imagined. This is just a thank you from Brenda, Executive Director of Southampton African American Museum. Thank you. Hey! I did the mask. How are you? You look gorgeous, too. Thank you very much. Thank you. All righty. I thought I had a bad handwriting.
Oh. Let me try to make it out, and it's small too.
Yeah, it is. Oh. The Andrew Brown incident took place. You haven't. Wait a minute. Okay. Were you aware that many black people that migrated from the South are from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where the Andrew Brown incident took place? You have an entire community from Bridgehampton, Southampton, and Easthampton. Bonnie Cannon. Hey, where's Bonnie? Bonnie, you're right there. Hey, how are you? How are you? I know the mask. I didn't see it. How are you?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I didn't know that you knew, that a large population of individuals are from that area, from Bridgehampton, Southampton, and Easthampton are right here. And that incident that happened in Elizabeth City with Andrew Brown very close because a lot of people that they leave here, when they go back down south, that's where they go. So you have a large community here that are really tied to that incident that happened down in Elizabeth City.
Thank you, Bonnie. Bonnie runs the center right here
Yeah,
on.
right here at the Child
Yeah,
Recreation
yes.
Center. Yeah.
Thank you. We visit. We got our car washed.
Yes, you do.
We joke. We got. No, I'm not gonna say. Should I tell them? No, because it was fun. We had kids washing the car, and we knew, and we were like, we got our car smeared because it was kids. But we loved it. It was the best, however much money we spent for a car smear ever. It was
I said the same thing.
we loved it. We loved it. It's fun.
Okay, this one is one that I wanted to talk about, so I'm glad I have the question. It says, in your letter to your nephew, you talked about feelings of rage, but you don't sound angry today. Do we all need to express, or it gets crazy now, the handwriting.
In your letter to your nephew, you talk about feelings of rage, but you don't sound angry today. Do we all need to express our rage at
See?
express or rage at bigotry or win people over with courtesy, patience, and love? I think that's on you. Look, so here's the thing. So just because I may feel rage, I'm not going to necessarily show it. I'm not going to walk around feeling rage and, that sort of, outwardly at least. That's something that I would discuss with my therapist. But do we need to express our rage or listen, I think you need to express whatever is you feel appropriate for you. I don't know who you are or where you are in your journey, but I do think that I don't know if I would quite qualify it the way that you say you would need to win people over with courtesy. I don't think you have to always be courteous to people. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. You have to fight ignorance with a bluntness to let people know what they're doing. And that's why I say racism is like a spell. Sometimes you have to snap people out of it, right? Like if someone is operating in that ignorance, like, also here recently, we were supposed to be social distancing, and I mentioned it to the person in the store, and the person coughed in my face. And so I had to say, hey! Hey! And she looked, and I said, you're not supposed to do that. That's not okay. And she looked at me the way you looked at me right now. Because otherwise, so I think you have to react to the moment with what is appropriate in the time.
Well, can I just follow up with that? Because that's why I was like, I don't think it got quite the message. But in your book overall, I'm doing a summation where you talk about you sometimes have to be angry. Then you talk about you fight it with compassion, you fight it with this. So I think overall you talk about the many levels that you fight the racism.
Yep.
So
I just want people to know anger is not always violence. Mm-hmm. And anger is not always being rude either. Like, again, you don't have to meet ignorance with ignorance. I mean, you have to confront it and call it out, and sometimes I think you have to meet it at whatever level it is. But you can be angry about something and still have your wits about you, right?
And then to me, the letter to your nephew, to me, it was so beautiful. I mean, like you can get emotional and just be like happy. It was so beautiful to me, and I get emotional because I think about my baby brother.
Yeah.
And I talked to you about that, like. It was so beautiful when you say to him, when I saw you, you made me know that I was beautiful. Oh my God, I melted.
Well, that's why, so here's the reason there are a couple reasons I wrote the book. One is that I had a lot of people calling me up, or emailing me, or texting me saying, and I think it was, and I had a lot of black friends and black folks I know, who had the same experience with their white friends. And I just said, well, I laughed with a few of them, and I said, you need to get another black friend. I said, because you're like the fourth person who called me today. And we joked about it. It was funny. But the reason I wrote the book, though, is because I was like, well, there is a need for this. If I have people in my life who I love who are reaching out to me, then I can reach out to other people. So that was one reason. The other reason is that I felt guilty about the world that I was handing off to my great-nephews, that I hadn't done enough, that maybe I had been too complacent, or that I hadn't moved fast enough, that maybe I, relented. Like, I didn't know. So we were all in that time, because we were in the middle of a pandemic, we were all feeling vulnerable. I think that was sort of the great equalizer of vulnerability, the pandemic was, because we didn't know if we were going to be sick, if our loved ones were going to be sick. We didn't know if, we were going to have a job, if we were going to have income. Like, everybody was sort of like at this level, like, what the hell is going to happen? So we didn't know. So again, The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin starts off with a letter to his nephew. And so I wasn't able to be with my family. And the way I usually show them love is that I bring them all up in the summer, and then you guys just have at it. We go on the boat, we go to the beach, we do barbecues, we get crawfish sent from Louisiana, we have crawfish boils, crab boils, fish fries, whatever, and then they just have a great time for a week or two, however long they want to stay. I couldn't do that because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I can't call him up and say, oh, Trishad, I love you. He'd be like, ew, Uncle Don, you're weird. And I just want to go back to playing my video game. So I sat down and I wrote a letter, and I said, and this is how the book poured out. I said, Dear Trishad, today I heard a dying man call out for his mama, and I wept for the world that will soon belong to you. I know what comes next as surely as I know the Mississippi rolls down to the sea. The weeping passes, and the rage takes hold. The rage burns, and blame begins. The blame bounces back and forth, and promises are made. The promises wither and complacency returns, and the complacency stays. It stagnates like a lullaby on autoplay until another man dies face down on another street in another city, and the weeping begins again. And this is how I start. This is what I says, I was the baby boy in our family until 13 years ago. When you came along and made a grandmother of my big sister, Lisa. Your grandmother helped raise me. My sister died, by the way, in January of 2018. Your grandmother helped raise me. And I helped raise your mother. So when you were born, it all came full circle. You look like me. We share the same forehead, nose, and well-articulated arm bones. We share the same skin. A dark russet, I can't read now, a dark russet color rich with history. Yours is darker than mine. In winter, but in the summertime, I gravitate in your direction. I know you, I said the first time I saw you. You made me believe I was beautiful because there was not one thing I would have changed about you. Not the kinky hair I had tried so hard to relax, nor the tapered nose that failed to match my father's, and no, absolutely not that rich russet skin. My hope then and now is for you to embrace your beautiful blackness with an ease I never mastered, no matter how many times your grandmother told me I was a thing of beauty.
See, you did it again.
I can't believe that I get emotional every time I read certain things about in the book. That part was one of the hardest parts to get through, and the part where I write about my sister's death. Yeah. And when I did the audiobook, I had to stop it. That took me a couple of hours to get through.
But you see how powerful it is.
Yes, and that's why, I mean, quite honestly, after I wrote this letter, the rest of the book it just came out. I wrote this book within 3 or 4 months, which is unheard of. To have the book, I think I started in like August, and it was done by November maybe. Yeah, and it was a rush, but I had to get it out of me. I just had to. Sorry.
No, it's wonderful. So beautiful to see another black man have that tenderness with another black man. You know, it doesn't happen often.
Well, when I was growing up, there were very few images of people on television who looked like me. I mean, quite honestly, it was Dynamite, it was just JJ on Good Times, which is fine. Look, JJ, make your money, right? Jimmy James Walker, but it wasn't necessarily representative of who my family was and who I thought that we were as a people, black people. Yeah. And so now those images are being represented, but I didn't have that. Yeah. And so I want my great nephew to have that, because if I had known that when I was younger, I might be president now. I'm not kidding. I think I would have reached, because there was always a thing like, well, I hope this will happen. I hope that I can reach this goal. I hope that I can have it, be on the news one day. I hope that I can hope. And then I want him to know that, yes, you can do that. Yeah. Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
And so I think that had I known that, I might be king of the world right now. Who knows?
Yeah, that's right. See, I'm telling you, but that was just so beautiful. And I think I'm thinking about this moment. You have more questions?
You can finish.
I'm just thinking about this moment, and I think about like the call for women to take action. Men also had a response to this action because men were around the world calling other men for the first time. The pandemic and the pandemic of racism, there were calls to action, and that was your call to action. Yeah.
So, and someone says, how do you feel about the status of race relations here in Sag Harbor today? Dun, dun, dun. Listen, so I like to speak from positions of authority and intelligence, and I like to be educated about what I'm talking about. I can talk about my particular experiences here, but I don't know enough about the community here because I live this hybrid life where I lived here the entire year for the pandemic, but I'm mostly here from Thursday to Monday afternoon. And that's a long time. That's a good 4 days, right? But I don't know enough. Obviously, when I see the community and I see how polarized it is, that's concerning to me because I think that when you have a community that has a rich history of diversity and what Maud K. Terry and Meza Meredith did, what they were trying to do, I think that the outreach could be better in the community. And I would like to see, I would like to see more people like being together. But my kids are not in school here, so I can't speak to that. I do vote here, right? I think I know enough about the community that I vote here, but I don't feel like I am educated and informed enough on racial issues in Sag Harbor to be able to speak with authority. But obviously, I know that there is room for improvement. All right. There are other people in this room, I'm sure, who could speak, on it better than I do. Do you think history is repeating itself, i.e., Jim Crow, voting suppression, racism more pronounced, etc.? Larry Street. Yes, I do. I do think it's repeating itself. I think, as I write about in the book, and I know people, sort of question it. I think that we're in the last throes of white supremacy.
Last throws?
Yes, I do. And you know who else agrees with me? Bernice King. Because people are fighting tooth and nail, and when there is a storm like this, when you see all of this unrest, on the other side of a storm is what? Yeah, there's a rainbow. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but I do think that we're in a moment that can produce profound change. And I'm optimistic, and I'm hopeful. I don't want to live in a world where I have to be skeptical. Listen, I have sense. I'm not stupid. I get it. I know it's going to be a hard fight. But I do think that we're in the last vestiges of that, and that's why we have an insurrection.
Yeah.
It's because people are, and another reason we have an insurrection is because people don't know the true history of this country. They think that the country was built in their image, therefore the election should go the way that they want it to go because it's always gone that way, because they've had the political power and the economic influence to be able to do it. So I think that the reason we have all this unrest is because there's something big that's going to happen on the other side of this. I think that we will all be happy about. It's not going to be perfect, and it's going to take some time, but I do think that that's where we are right now. Listen, the demographics of the country are changing, and that's going to do it for us. By 2040, 2045, we're going to be in a minority-majority country, and people are going to be fighting tooth and nail to hang on to power, so get ready.
You heard him. Get ready. There's one more.
What's your definition of woke? Look, there's a whole thing about.
I know. I heard someone say we don't say woke anymore. So
there's a whole thing about woke that, look, I think there's a real conversation about wokeness and whether it's gone too far and all of that. I do think that people, I don't like these little catchphrases like woke and politically correct and all that. I think it's a good way to categorize people or something, because we're always looking to try to figure out how we can put people or something in a box. I do think that some people are so woke they need a nap. But I do think that people who criticize sort of this woke thing is they don't want to be held accountable. I think there's a happy medium for us to be able to deal with wokeness and all of that, but I don't really have a definition of what woke is. I do think that I will say that you don't want to become what you fight against. So you don't want to be so woke that you are in a trance.
That's
all
right.
That's it.
Yes. So thank you so much. Let's give Don a round of applause.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. You deserve it.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your honesty and your transparency and laying it on the line in this book.
Thank you. I just want to, I introduced some people, but I just want to say this is Dick Malone. That's my father-in-law. Father-in-law to be soon, and Joanne Malone.
Thank
right
you
here,
so
my
much.
mother-in-law to be soon.
Nice to
and
meet
that's
you.
my fiance, Tim.
Thank
and you
you.
met my boss, who was the head of Turner, ex-boss. And my very dear friend, Donna Karen. I'm sure there are other people here that I don't recognize. If you know me, say, hey, guys, how are you? There is the Azarest Syndicate back there that I call them.
Bill, the mayor.
The mayor. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.